I need to ask because I've kind of stayed on the fringes of this, but there seems to be like a beef between yourself and no, actually, not even between yourself, between many
Between
Bible scholars,
scholarship?
between scholarship and one Ammon Hillman, I think his name is.
Yes.
As far as I understand, Ammon Hillman
He's a crazy
he runs the
person.
channel Lady. He comes across like that. he comes across like that. I remember the only thing I knew about Ammon is he had a channel. I was really excited to watch an episode with yourself and Ammon together, and you both jumped in. And before you could even really talk, he said that, and I quote, "I think you're full of shit, Kipp, and I'm going to expose you." And it was just meant to be a friendly conversation. And I was so shocked. And then after that, he's like smelling his shirt, biting his nails. I was like, is this guy on drugs? I took screenshots and I sent it to some of the people who were on the panel. I was like, I think he was on drugs. You left the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? You left because you're like,
it's the one and only time I've ever done that.
Yeah. So I was like, whoa. So that's the only information I had of Ammon. And then all of a sudden, my dad reaches out and he's like, have you heard of Ammon Hillman? I'm like, oh my, and it's because he went on that popular person's YouTube channel. I didn't actually watch the interview.
Danny Jones.
Oh yeah, but in the background, I'm just hearing a lot of whispers. There seems to be a war on the rising. Could you just give us a recap? What's happening?
So, I don't know if anything's happening. I mean, Ammon Hillman made this appearance on the Danny Jones podcast that got like 350,000 views in a week, right? And he says all sorts of crazy garbage, which is his whole thing. His whole thing is that so he's a classicist, which means that he has done his training in Greek literature, and I believe he specialized in medical texts. And there's tons and tons of them, right? Like the corpus of Greek literature is vast, like it's huge. So I don't begrudge classicists for getting lost in it. I just wish they would stay there, which is something that a number of them don't do, and he's one of them. So he's got this idiotic idea that the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, which may have been composed as early as like 250 BCE, his idea is that the text was originally Greek, that the Septuagint was the original text, and that the Hebrew Bible, as we have it, was based on manuscripts that were retroverted or back translated from Greek into Hebrew, which is patented nonsense. And I mean, it's easy to show, right? Like that was the whole point, that one and only appearance that I had with him on the Gnostic Informants show like a year ago. It was supposed to be his 100K sub celebration, the one that you were talking about, the one and only show I showed up on with him. We were supposed to discuss this issue, which came first, the Septuagint or the Hebrew text. And yeah, so he was super rude and condescending, and said a bunch of.
It was like abrupt, like it was abrupt out of like I'm not one to I have family members and history of drug abuse and things like that. Like I'm not pointing the finger or saying that anyone's a bad person, but like I very much got like this guy's high vibes from it. He might not have been, he definitely might not have been, but he's just the way it was very sporadic, very aggressive, and then he was pacing back and forth, chewing his nails, sniffing his shirt multiple times within like a few minutes, and I was just like, what's going on here? Like
and he wasn't listening either, right? Like this is the thing this is the thing that ticks me off, is he's not.
And again, let me just say he might not have been on drugs, and so I'm just putting that out there.
I don't know. He was being a douche, whether he was high or not. And he wasn't listening,
that's fair.
Right?
Yeah,
so and then I found out that he doesn't even know, like his Greek is great. As well, even then, like he's got these weird, because he's immersed in these medical texts, he's transposing uh you know how words will take on meanings in certain contexts, like this happens in any language, right?
Yeah.
um
So if I
so
say like I'm flying down the road in
sure,
my,
yeah,
I'm driving, I'm flying down the road, people
exactly.
I can understand. Yeah.
I think a really good example of this is if you've ever read like a legal document, right? It
Mm.
uses English words that don't mean the same thing as they do in conversation.
Yeah.
So, he's immersed in these medical texts, and then he's taking, the meanings of words that appear in these medical texts and applying those to everything. So, for example, where the Greek word for anointed one, which is the Hebrew word Mashiach, is
Mhm.
Christos, which is this is the word from which we get Christ. It's Jesus the Messiah, right? Jesus the anointed one. Um, so the it comes from a verb that means to rub or to apply some sort of ritual uh, um, implement on your body. So like it's an appropriate word to use for translating something like Mashiach, which means anointed one. But within these Greek medical texts, it means to to apply some sort of drugs to the eyes to achieve this for healing or for enlightenment or something, right? So he takes that meaning, transposes that into these Hellenistic Jewish texts of like the New Testament, and then back into the Septuagint, and goes, well, Jesus was a drug pusher. And I'm
Mm.
like, no, he fucking wasn't. Like, it's not. So, but I found out in this stream that he doesn't know any other ancient well, he probably knows some Latin too. He knows Latin, he knows Greek, he knows nothing about Hebrew, nothing about Aramaic, nothing about any Semitic or any other ancient
Mm.
Near Eastern language. And when it comes to making textual comparisons between the Greek text of the Septuagint and the Hebrew Bible texts, and trying to and if you're in the process of determining which one of these was original in the translation, it's pretty damn important to know both languages. And if
Mm.
you don't, you can't make that judgment. I
Yeah.
happen to know both languages, and I happen to understand why, the many reasons why we
Mm.
are absolutely certain that the Septuagint is a translation of these Greek originals. So, yeah, so that was.
The is it kind of the case of when you're a screwdriver, everything's a screw? Like you just kind of like he's
I think
immersed in the medical text,
I
he's
think so.
immersed in Greek stuff, and he's starting to see these little like connections here and there, and he draws one of those. Have you seen that? There's that meme of like a million like lines between different things on the wall, and the guy's like, "I found it's." I don't know. I'm explaining the meme poorly, but it's like you can't point to one specific thing. You have to take the huge amount of what I might say cherry picked resources to kind of find the what he's kind of getting
Yeah.
at. Is that
No, I think that's a pretty good analogy. I think probably pretty similar to what he's
so?
doing. So yeah. So I mean, Dan made a couple of because Hillman absolutely hates me. He absolutely hates Dan. Um, So Dan did a couple of his short little video responses to
Yeah,
Hillman's nonsense, and I had actually, when I first saw this interview, I had suggested to the Diablo Critics group that maybe this is something we wanted to take a look at for our
yeah.
June episode, but then Dan
I
went ahead and
he said no.
no, well, he just went ahead and made his own
Oh yeah.
responses. So I'm like, oh well, I'll just make mine, then we'll do something else. So, but
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
worry about it. I have something
There's
planned.
so
It's gonna
much
be
to
great.
talk about.
Oh yeah. So, anyways,
It's,
that's yeah, Ammon
well,
Hillman.
it's one of those. It's one of those things that you get someone I don't know, like who goes on Joe Rogan and says that like, but like mushrooms come from my cock or something just absolutely out there. You know what I mean? And then everyone will be like, whoa, like, I can't believe it. Like, mushrooms come from this guy's cock. Like, they'll have some, some like bizarre theory, and that's what will get attention, especially if people use big words or are engaging in kind of areas that they explain to their audience, but in a way that their audience isn't equipped to kind of correctly discern. Like they don't have the training to know whether or not someone's pulling the wool over their eyes or anything. We actually have a comment from Pat Lowinger. Here we go again with Dr. Davis acting like a shill for big academia and keeping down the groundbreaking research of someone like Hillman. Open up your eyes, people, at Kipp Davis. And we also have a $5 super chat. Thank you for the $5 super chat from Milwaukee Atheist. We picked up a book from Hillman like 6 months ago. Lots of claims and not a single citation. That is a bummer.
Figure.